Awesome. Well, let's kick things off. So, guys, I really appreciate everybody coming in, being a part of this meeting. This is in New Jersey. I've been calling it Y2K today. We actually made the switch August 1st. So I know a lot of other states are following suit. I think we're one of the earlier ones. I want to say California was actually the first to flip, but I actually couldn't find data on that. So as we're rolling, we're just figuring things out as we go. And what we found is that a lot of brokers, leadership, a lot of realtors seem to be a little lost in the shuffle, lost in the sauce with what's happening. And we wanted to make sure that we started to, bring what we're doing internally in our community here to line and make sure that it's available for everybody that wants to plug in so that you can navigate this Q3, Q4, and following into the next year, 2025, with just absolute domination and certainly a quiet mindset. So I'm Brett Sikora. I run a very large sales team out of New Jersey, have a large downline here at EXP, and really, for me, I've geeked out on the process of agent development. I've geeked out on making sure that agents have everything that they need to succeed, whether it's the tools, resources, like I mentioned, quiet mind. And it's been working really well for me. So I'm happy to have you guys on this Zoom, being a part of our world. And I want to introduce. We'll start with our two hosts, Jeff Bonk and Omar Subi, both near and dear to my heart, and really have spent the time figuring this thing out and making sure that they again have everything that they need to help the agents navigate the today that we're living in, which might be different tomorrow as this continues to evolve. So, Jeff, let's kick it off with you. Give us a little background.
Appreciate it, man. Hey, everybody. Some of you guys, I see some familiar faces that I know. Some of you guys may not know me. My name is Jeff Bonk. Me and my wife and I run a small little team called the Homes by Bonk Group, the HBB Group in Hoboken, 10 agents, about 100 million a year in volume. And we have recently, even more excitingly, partnered with Brett and Omar and Jen at Align. And we're really excited to just build something really big and awesome. So thank you. Yeah, we're super excited. It gets the fun is being able to have more impact on the industry, right? Both the clients and agents. And today is a perfect example of it. We've been studying this thing for 6 months. We've been talking through in our little crew of 10 awesome powerhouse agents. And I'm just super excited to be able to share this all with a larger community, a larger group, because that's what we're here for, is to really level up the industry in every way possible and provide anything we can to support the real estate agent industry. So I'll kick it to Omar and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that, Jeff. Is support the industry as a whole is our motto. So whether you're at EXP, any other brokerage, single agent, agent on a team, anyone collectively in this industry, we're happy to help however we can. I'm Omar Subi. I'm the director of sales for the Align team. I've been with Brett for 6 years now. So we've gone through a lot of different markets, a lot of different changes. And what I can tell you from what I've learned in this industry is if you're able to adapt to the changes that are that always happen in this industry, you're going to always come out at the top. Not to segue into the meeting, but let's get right into it. This is no different than, Jen, you and I were chatting a couple of days ago. This is no different than what happened to us in COVID-19. We were literally just trying to figure out how to get lockboxes open and how to get people into showings. We figured it out then. We'll figure it out now. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of agents are somewhat freaking out. But what I can say is let's just take a step back, learn as much as we can, have an open mind around these changes. And I promise you're going to come out at the top from all this.
Awesome. Cool. I think let's just set a little bit of the agenda today of what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to go through, and how we'd like to have the meeting really unfold here. First of all, I just want to make it clear, we're not here to go deep into paperwork. We're not here to go deep into the rules, the nuances, the what ifs, all the little nuances that are going to have to be figured out over time and with our individual brokerages and with our individual organizations. We all know compensation is coming off of the MLS, and we all know we have to have buyer agency agreements signed with buyers before showing them properties, right? And those are the things that we're going to be really talking around. How are we going to run our businesses, grow, expand, take market share, and really thrive through those changes? As Omar said, it's like COVID, right? And I have some notes later to go through where it's literally, how did we need to adapt then? And this is just a different type of adaptation, we're going to be working differently through it. That said, I want to make something a little clear because I'm so kind of excited about these changes because I think change brings opportunity to those who really want to prepare. I don't like the way this happened. I think it's sloppy right now. I think the way this came about was not really the most organized way. I think the court case was botched. I think that the rule changes, some are good, some are bad, and some are going to be good and some are going to be disasters. But I like to say, I heard our CEO here at EXP said a great example yesterday on a call, and he said he feels like, and I completely resonate with this, he feels like he got his driver's license at 16, followed all the rules, was driving around for 5 or 10 years, and then was told, you've been breaking the law for the last 5 or 10 years, and you need to change everything you're doing. And that's kind of how I feel. That said, we're going to change, and we're going to do everything we need to do to thrive, not just survive, but thrive through these changes and come out the other side incredibly strong. So I just want to set that tone. As I think, Brett, Omar, Jen, all the leadership here, we all kind of share that similar philosophy and feelings about how we got here and where we're going from here. So I'll kick it to you guys if you want to add any other context there before we roll into some more specifics.
And that's exactly the mindset that we're having. I mean, from the agents that I've spoken with in and outside of our team, the agents that are doing this business at a high level are taking this on the chin. The change is here, and we just have to adapt, sharpen our skills, elevate our game, bring more value. This is from day one. This one thing that resonated with me was, things are changing on the buyer side. You go into a listing presentation and you're presenting to the seller why they should work with you. It's going to be no different why you shouldn't do that for the buyers, and having a full deck of ammo that you're going to go into every single presentation and show them why you are the top choice and why they should work with you. And here's my compensation that I expect at the end of the day. So we'll dive right into that. Brett, was there anything that you wanted to add on that? Anything that you wanted to touch on?
No, I'm good to go. Let's rock this.
Cool. So what I'll say, we're here to bring everyone together. We're going to be working through this hand in hand. There is going to be a lot of change. A lot of change has happened. A lot of things don't have answers, but we're figuring this out day by day, and things are going to unfold in certain ways. Some MLSs are taking different stances on these changes. So we just have to make sure that we understand what these changes mean, how they impact our business, how they impact our clients. So when you go face a client, or if it's someone like, let's say, for example, someone that you're already working with, and now you have to discuss a buyer broker agency agreement with them, you're going to be address all their concerns. If you don't educate yourself and familiarize yourself with all these changes, you're not going to be able to do that. So spend some time, do a lot of trainings on this, role play with agents. I see a lot of agents have kind of gone away from these role plays. We used to do them all the time during COVID because we had a little more time on our hands. I'd say these things are super important, and I'm seeing these internally in our Slack channels. A lot of agents are now raising their hands to say, who can I role play this with, right? And that is the best way that you're going to be able to tackle this and take it head on and take on these changes.
For sure. And I want to just give 2 examples real quick of things that I think just matter at a big picture mindset here before we kind of get into some of the topics of the specifics. And one is, first of all, I steal everything from everybody, right? I'm just like a curator of ideas, right? The first thing that I love that I've heard recently is Tom Ferry's bison, right? It's the only animal that turns into the storm, and it's the animal that survives the best, right? So be a bison in this environment right now. And another one that I just absolutely resonates with me right now is our good friend out in San Diego, Dan Beer, who talks about the hard moments being the inflection points that you should be thankful for, because it's going to weed out everybody else, and you're going to have a chance to succeed through that hard moment. And I think if we can go into these changes and go through all the strategy that we're going to get into and make those changes properly and execute very well, we are going to come out very strongly on the other side. And I think this is the rinse, wash, rinse, and repeat that I think we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have changes, right? Today is one of them. Today is a big change we're seeing. We're seeing things come off the MLS. We need new paperwork to go into agreements and go into showings. We're going to have to strategize and execute our butts off on what are we going to do? How are we going to actually get through today with the rules, the information, the changes that we have. Then things are going to change again. Things are going to adjust. Things are going to adapt. They're going to put out new policies. There's going to be new rules. There's going to be new standard business practices that emerge, not commission standards, practices that will be standardized. Then we're going to train our butts off, and we're going to friggin' adapt and change again. And we're going to rinse and wash and repeat over and over and over. So this is something we've also talked about doing every 2 weeks, potentially, as things change, really thinking about this as a workshop, right? What's new, what's happening, what are we seeing out there, and how do we as a community all come together to really excel through this. Something else to keep in mind, the playing field's now leveled, right? So I don't care if you've been doing this for 30 years or 6 months. Like, everyone has an equal opportunity with these new rules, with the new way we need to present our value, with the new way we need to engage with clients, to really have an ability to start from that place. And careers are made in this, right? The careers are made in what? The subprime mortgage collapse. Whoever made it through that are the top agents today. Before that, the .com bubbles where everybody went broke, people who made it through that, the REO days, all these tough times, you see the agents that stand on the other side really are the ones that have been able to build insane businesses and organizations on the other side of. So, Brett, Omar, what we got there?
Yeah, and I would say, go ahead, Brett.
I was just going to add in, I mean, to that point, I got licensed in 2007 at 21 years old, and really, it was tough to make this career work at that point in time. And real estate is what caused that economic collapse. So anytime that anybody didn't want to buy a product, like, we're talking about getting contracts signed around agency right now. Imagine being in a world where if they didn't buy the property for $800,000, it was worth $790,000 the next day, and then the next day it was worth $780,000. And you're talking to these sellers about you should have priced it $749,000 when I told you to, because now it's worth $725,000, and it's just kind of slipping around that. But one of the things that I think is really a big differentiator, and this is what I love about Leo, the CEO. I actually was just on a Zoom with him from 11 to 12 as well. Is that he was in the field. He was one of the top Keller Williams agents in the world, or in the country, for as a single agent. And one of the big differentiators with us, and where we really like to collaborate on the leadership side of things, is we're in the field as well. I just had a listing go up in Freehold. I had to call a seller about getting the addendum signed. I had to call a landlord about getting the addendum signed. Like, these are all real things that you think the conversations are going to just be an absolute piece of cake sometimes. Sometimes you think they're going to be hard. Whatever it may be, I got on it, and we had to work through some details, and I had to know exactly what was in that addendum that we have here at EXP, for instance, so that I could actually explain what the different types of agency are now, or how he doesn't have to pay a buyer agent commission, but if an offer comes in, he should still consider paying a buyer agent commission. So I just bring that up because myself, Omar still does 20 million a year. Jeff and his wife still do, I don't know, 50 plus, 75 million plus a year, 100 million a year. We're still 100% in it. And from a role play component and whatnot, we're actually feeling like the experience, like we have empathy and a connection around, the jitters, or around the hesitations, around, having a fearful mindset around this, and it's our job to make sure that we lift you up and move through this thing together.
And I would also add to that, I think collaboration is going to bring a lot of innovation in this industry now, because what the sense that I'm getting from a lot of agents is there's a lot of unknown. And so from what I can tell you, the agents that are talking to each other, coming up with different ideas, role playing these scenarios, or talking about these scenarios, what's working and what's not working for them, are the agents that are able to navigate through these obviously difficult times and changing times, but they're going through it. So I would say, have that mindset of being a problem solver and bringing solutions to the table, rather than say, okay, I have a problem, I don't know what the solution is, right? So if you're going to all these trainings that your brokers are offering, if you're going to trainings that other agents are offering, collaborating with other agents, you're only going to elevate your skill set and going to have more to talk about with your client at the end of the day. And I would say the other thing too that's super important now more than ever is knowing your value, right? Know what you're bringing to the table, and have confidence in pitching that to the client, because now more than ever, you're going to have that serious conversation, especially with buyers, of what you're bringing to the table and how you're going to take them from point A to point Z and solving their problems.
I can't help myself. Can I squeeze in here for 1 second,
For
guys?
sure.
Well,
Thank-
before you do, who are you?
Oh, hi, everybody. I am Jen Schiff. I'm the loyal Wizard of Oz to all of the gentlemen talking. So part of this, like you guys are mentioning, I know there's a lot of like segmentations to where the conversations are important. And I think one part of this is first learning that it doesn't serve us to start to battle anybody around the specificities of what actually happened and the ruling and the attorneys and the lawsuit and the news and all the things under the rainbow. And one of the easiest tactical things I would love everyone on this call to leave with today is their elevator speech around when that starts coming into play. What do you say to help them understand it in a very simple analogy that just completely takes away all of that contention that we're feeling and brings them to a place of aha, so that they're back into the rapport with you, so you can go into what really matters and the normal operating business structure that we're used to. There is someone on this call who has created a really great one, and I had asked him ahead of time if it came up, if he'd be willing to share. Could we allow an agent who's on the ground with us right now to give you his elevator speech and what he's using?
I would love
For
it.
sure.
Romeo Santos, are you here?
And hold on, Jen, Roman,
Yeah.
before you jump in, and Jen,
Yeah.
guys, this is what we want, right? Like this, we're going to have some topics we're going to run through, but this is the collaboration that we really want to drive these ongoing meetings around. So just to set that tone, just want to put that out there.
And if anyone else has one, we'd actually love to hear it too.
Yes.
How you doing, everybody? Romeo
Romeo.
Santos, Jen, thank you so much. Thanks for allowing me on the call. So Jen and I actually were having a conversation the other day, and this just kind of organically came out, and I was just sharing with her some of the conversations that I've already been having with sellers, because of course this conversation has come up. Oh, well, what about, this lawsuit? How does that work and everything? And I think a few notes that I have is like, first and foremost, I think there's 4 things that you as an agent will really, really need to have, and some will have it more easily than others, depending on your skill set and your just natural confidence, but faith in your word, right? Like faith in the fact that you understand what it is that you're saying and how you're saying it, and your confidence, much like when you walk into a room and you flick on the light switch, you don't think much about it. You have faith that that light switch is going to work and light is going to appear. Same thing. When you say something, you just have to have faith that what you're about to say is going to work to help convey the message that you're trying to convey. You're not trying to spiel anybody. You're not trying to fool anybody. You're not trying to convince anybody. You're just trying to tell them something that will work, right? And if you take a page out of what would be arguably one of the greatest leaders in the world that has a following of 2.4 billion people in the world, Jesus Christ did it just like this. He told you stories, and those stories helped you to understand. Okay. Now, if you're not religious, I apologize. Second is your worth, right? Your worth and your value. Really having a true, genuine knowledge in that worth and the value, which some of you have already talked about, but really understanding that you are there to help people and really guide them in the best way possible, that you truly are their fiduciary, that you are actually putting their needs above your own, which is hard as a salary, as a commissioned employee, and commissioned person rather, but just making sure that that's always top of mind. Confidence in your skills, that when you actually say, I'm going to do this, like I'm going to do it, and I know I'm going to do it because I've done it, or I've got the support system around me that I tell you I'm going to do it, it's going to get done. And then knowledge in the process. And so I think that's a big one. You're right. You don't need to know all of the ins and outs of the rulings and what was said and who testified to what and what went wrong, what didn't go wrong, what went right, what didn't. But just truly understanding like the overall concept. And so how this normally starts with me is people go, oh, so I heard I don't have to pay a buyer agent anymore. And I said, you know what? As a matter of fact, you actually never had to pay a buyer's agent. And they go, really? Oh, yeah, you actually never had to pay a buyer agent. And so the way that it has always worked is that well, not always, but the way that it has worked for the most recent history is that I will negotiate a commission with you. And as a result, I will then share a part of my commission with a buyer's agent, because in today's world, 99.9% of all buyers are finding their properties through some sort of online portal. And then they come to us with a real estate agent. Rarely do I sell your house personally. That's just how it is. And so for me to entice buyers to bring them, they need to, have a commission that they're going to be paid. And so really the only thing that's going to differ for you now is how you pay that commission. And so we live here in Annapolis in the Maryland area, and we have this amazing bridge. It's called the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. And so at one point many years ago, you would drive up to a toll, you would stop, you would drop in your coins, or even before that, there would be a person there, you'd hand them some money, they would pay the toll, and then off you would go. But then on your way back from the beach, you would just come back. So you didn't pay a toll, right? Then it changed, and suddenly we had Easy Pass. And some people got to go through a little faster because they had Easy Pass, but still they paid one way. Now everything's overhead. You don't stop for anything, and it's a high speed, and you just kind of go through. And I said, but what's important about that is that you always paid in one way. And so let me ask you a question. When you bought this house, do you remember if you paid your commission or not? And they always go, well, no, I don't believe I did. I'm pretty sure the seller paid my buyer's agent commission. And I said, exactly. And so the way that it works is that you were paying the commission going one way. You don't pay it when you're broke and you're buying a house and you're struggling to come up with the down payment money. You paid it after the market did you a favor and increased over time, and you had this false appreciation that occurred, and then you took part of that false house money, if you would, and you paid it back in a portion to the buyer's agent. So you, in essence, are paying it forward, if you would, to a buyer, just like a seller did for you. And they go, oh, I never thought about it that way. And I said, well, that's exactly what is happening. Like, you buy a house and you struggle to buy a house. You do the right thing and you pay your mortgage. And over time, the property appreciates, and appreciation and inflation happens. And your house that you paid $100,000 for is now worth $200,000. Well, at the end of it, you're going to walk away with an $80,000 profit instead of a $100,000 profit, because you took some of that money and you paid it forward back to that buyer's agent to represent them. Does that make sense? And they go, yeah, that actually does make sense. And so I then say, so you don't have to pay them a commission. However, if I asked you to come into work for me and I told you I wasn't going to pay you, how motivated would you be? And I go, well, I wouldn't work for free. And I said, and neither will a buyer's agent. But at the end of the day, we need the buyer's agents because those are the ones with the buyers. And then they start to kind of get it. Oh, I understand. There's a system here. Exactly. That's all that it is. And so that's what I've been able to do. And granted, we have the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, so it's easy. You may have tolls that are similar in your area, so something of that nature may work for you as well. But I think helping people to understand that, number one, yeah, you're paying it, but you're not really paying it. I mean, it's with money that you didn't really do anything to earn other than buy a house a long time ago and let the market appreciate for you. So one, you're not really paying your money, which is hard sometimes for people to wrap their head around, but it's not like they took $100,000 and they invested it into the stock market and that money grew. They probably put $10,000 into a house and now they have $200,000 worth of profit. Like, that's all false money. You didn't really do anything to earn that money.
I think we could all go home now. Romeo nailed it. We have the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, and the GW Bridge, which are great examples of your Annapolis bridge, because you only pay one way on those as well. You only pay to get into the city, which the big joke is you don't have to pay to get out back to Jersey. But I think that's a beautiful analogy. And I think some of the things that really struck home there with me is you mentioned a specific situation where buyers may not have the funds to pay those commissions always. And I think one thing that we're all going to realize is this is going to become very hyper local, because in some markets you have move down buyers or relocation buyers, or you have these different buyers that do have the funds, and maybe it's a competitive market and they're going to pay their buyer's agent separately. And you have other markets where buyers are completely strapped, first time home buyers, whatever the case may be, that don't have, and they're going to need to ask. And sellers, if they want to sell their property, are going to have to understand the nuances and the dynamics in that particular market. And that could be like multiple markets inside a geographical area, right? It's not like geographical area by geographical area. And I think that's a super strong distinction that you made there. And that was awesome. Really awesome explanation, man.
And that was
my appointments.
Romy, I think a part of this that resonates with me is the art of storytelling, because you've mastered that story and how to tell it and how to get the client to think in the way that you want them to think, right? Because you're delivering a certain message, but you're delivering it in such a certain way. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and assume that you figured that overnight. You probably practiced it over time, and now it's second nature to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really honest. I mean, one of the gifts that God gave me is an ability to just kind of speak off the cuff. And so for me, it really was something that just kind of happens. I have very few gifts. That happens to be one of them. But yes, I mean, I've certainly always kind of spoken in that way of, trying to convey things through storytelling, which I think is the most effective way. That's how I've always learned the best way is when somebody tells me a story, I tend to remember that story much more than the actual facts.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we unintentionally went right into our first point of what we really wanted to start talking about, which was making sure you have all your ducks in a row and having a plan of how you're going to speak to clients going forward. And the first point we really wanted to talk through, which we kind of already have, is making sure you have a way to clearly, unemotionally, positively, and strategically speak to clients. And that's going to change, like we talked about. It's going to change depending on, are you talking to a high, I always get the disc freaking things messed up, but are you talking to like a super analytical person that wants to know every detail of how this thing is going to unfold, how we got here, why are we here, what does this mean in all these 10 different scenarios? And you got to be able to speak in the correct way to that client. And you're going to have some that go, what do I need to do? I need that house. What's it going to cost me? That sounds perfect. Let's go. And not over explain it and not go crazy. And most importantly, leaving anything that's your emotional feelings about how we got here and how it's not fair and all that stuff. I hear a lot of that on Facebook and on all the groups and stuff. You got to leave that stuff home. There's no place for that in speaking with clients and any kind of, they don't want to hear you complaining. They don't want to hear poor me. They don't want to hear how you're frustrated and there's so much change going on. They want to hear, what is this going to mean for me? How is this going to benefit me? How are you going to take this and strategically help me get the home I want, sell my home for more money, net more money, and so on, right? So I think that's the number one thing is of having a plan is develop what Romeo has, develop your own version of it, develop different versions of it, and know how to really be a chameleon to meet people where they're at for those types of conversations.
I think too, to keep in the back of your head too, is what problem can you solve for that client, whether it's a buyer, seller, tenant, landlord, whoever it is that you're working with, is really figuring out what problem that client has and how you can solve that for them. If you can solve the problem for anyone, you can sell them on anything because that's the solution that you're bringing to the table.
Absolutely. We're problem solvers in the core for sure. Anything else to add, anybody, on kind of tonality, the way you need to have your story and your kind of, elevator pitch and beyond really dialed in? Any questions on it? Any other thoughts? Cool. All right. The next thing that we have on our list for having
real quick. Sorry.
Yep.
There is one question. What would you say is the best way to briefly summarize to a client what happened in the lawsuit without confusing them? Is there a script that we could talk through on this? What's the elevator speech if you have to?
For that specific question, I'm going to, the way I'm going to answer it, I say, look, industries change and evolve. And the way that there's been financial regulations that have come down from Wall Street and different places like that before, and industries change the way they operate. This was simply a way that the industry operated for a long time, that there's new laws and new regulations, and there's new ways that we need to operate now. And that's new paperwork and a little bit of a different flow of the transaction process. And keep it not positive, not negative, just different is going to be my initial right off the cuff response to that type of question for an explanation.
What Leo had mentioned yesterday too on that Zoom is the crux of the lawsuit settlement was that commission sharing was not clear. And that was affecting the seller in a negative way. So the reality is that all that's changed is there aren't less, I wouldn't even say less commissions, but it's not that the commission's not a part of the conversation anymore. It's that commission has to come directly from the parties that they have the relationships with. So in this scenario, or not necessarily the parties they have the relationships with, but there has to be separate negotiations. So in this scenario, if the seller is going to be paying, 5% total out, it has to be 2.5% directly to the buyer's agent, 2.5% directly to the listing agent. We heard too, I was on a Zoom earlier, that even if you're dual disclosed and you're operating within the same brokerage and everything like that, they really want to see a buyer brokerage agreement with that one person, and they really want to see a listing agreement with that other person as well. So just keep that in mind. But that's the simplicity of it. It's like they wanted to get away of, 2.5 and 2.5 can still equal 5, but they want it to come from, either the party in 2 different checks, or they want it to come from 2 different parties. They didn't want the 5 to hit one party and then get distributed out that way. And that was the way that real estate was done, from what I understand, since the 1990s, or a little earlier before that. But that would be my quick way of doing it.
And I think the most important thing with this, and this is probably the biggest positive, the way I'm looking at it, is you're actually establishing a relationship right now with your buyers. So Kevin Cassie's on this call. Him and I were chatting yesterday. And Kev, feel free to unmute and chat about this. The way we were looking at this is you now have an established relationship with any buyer that you're working with. So what's stopping you from picking up the phone and prospecting for that buyer for what exactly they're looking for, and switching your business from just being, say, if you're a buyer-based agent, to now you're going to add that much more opportunity to your business from the list side. So Kev, do you mind sharing what we were talking about a little bit yesterday?
Yeah. So for me, always when I get a referral from somebody, someone I trust, someone I know it's going to buy, I was always way more motivated to jump on the phones, jump on the dialer, and try to prospect for them. Way less motivated to call with someone from a Zillow Flex, thinking like, I don't know how real they are or how much they're really invested. I don't want to embarrass myself. If I bring them, they don't want to show up. But now I have a signed agreement with them, no matter who it is. I know that they're going to be paying me no matter what. It's that much more motivation to jump on the phones and to prospect and to pitch that to these clients and say, this is what I'm going to do for you. I'm not just going to sit back and relax and wait for the MLS to hit and this. I'm going to go try to find you something.
And Kev, just so everybody knows, you did only 22 million last year, right? You're only the
23 some rentals if we added the way EXP did. So we'll call it 22.
And he has 3 kids under 5 years old.
and has only been a realtor for 3 years.
Let's go. Very nice. Cool. Anybody else on this? Any other questions? Anyone wants to jump in with any thoughts?
I have a thought. You touched on this earlier, Jeff and Leo, as well, as because this is not static, it's changing like by the day. So what's accurate today with regard to these policies may not be accurate tomorrow. And so what that means to me is, in general, and this applies to all of your business, make sure that you're not taking responsibility for the information that you're giving them. And the way that we take responsibility is by giving them our opinion and telling them what it is. And what I would suggest is, whatever your pitch is, make sure, number one, it's factual. And number two, the easiest thing to do is just make it a question, right? So if they ask you a question about something regarding the policy, you should have it on you, or at least an outline summary of it. And you could just point to that question and say, well, as of today, blah, 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 XYZ. So what does that mean to you, right? And it's the same thing when we're making offers or we're pricing a property. We're never telling them what the price is. We're putting the responsibility for the same on the market while still maintaining authority and control by directing them via asking the right questions. So just make sure you're question based, and that gets you guys off the hook for this ever-changing language and in these policies.
Yep.
And I would say that's exactly it, Dave, is knowing your market more than ever, knowing the forms inside and out. So when the question comes up, if you're presenting a client on something, what doesn't matter who it is, and a question comes up, you know exactly what these forms are saying. And look, Leo put it perfectly yesterday. He said, this is a moving target. It's going to continue to evolve and change. But with that change, it is our responsibility to make sure that we know inside and out what these forms are saying, and being able to deliver that message as clear as possible to the client.
Absolutely. And I think the way that you communicate that as well, because I think a lot of people worry about, well, what is my value? Am I not dialed in enough? Do I not have enough expertise if I start saying, well, we don't know what's going to happen, we're not sure where we are today versus where we are tomorrow? The selling point is you are getting somebody who is 1000% dialed into what's happening in real time and going to be able to pivot our direction and our strategy on a dime as things change, right? You're not getting somebody who's from behind figuring it out. I'm letting you know this is where we are today. We might have some changes coming down the pipe, and when we do, I'm going to have a brand new strategy to be able to execute in your best interest then, right? So you don't have to act like you're not good enough or you don't know just because you're laying into this thought process of an evolving landscape as well. I want to say something to Omar just touched on. The next thing we wanted to go through is that you really, in this environment, and I'll raise my hand as being guilty of this before, you have to know your forms inside and out now. I was like, our transaction department is going to send that. Ira's going to send that over. What does it say? Hold on, let me get back and read that again. I haven't read it in 5 years because we got so comfortable with these forms. Big mistake I think we're going to see today is where people just swap the forms out and keep doing the same thing. And that you're going to get more questions. There's going to be more nuances. They're going to change. These are not the forms where I asked a couple of people, what about this form for the tenant side of things or landlord? This doesn't really apply. Oh, we're still working on those forms. Okay, the changes are here today. The MLSs didn't provide some forms that we need yet. New Jersey didn't provide some forms that we need yet, right? Things are going to change. And as the forms come out, and we have company forms, there's MLS forms, there's state-driven forms. I don't care what forms you decide that you want to use, and that's going to be in your toolkit. You better know every letter and word of it. And I guarantee 90% of realtors did not do that prior to these changes coming up. And I'm one of them. I'll raise my hand right for it.
I'll say too, back to what Dave was saying in regards to that, this is something that one of our agents brought up when somebody was pushing back actually earlier today. Shout out to Cam. He found this article, which actually shows Governor Murphy signed a bill that here in New Jersey puts everything into effect August 1st. And it's like, it's August. I'm not making this up, guys. So it just kind of had facts around it too, and added the validity to what it, what it is the agent was talking about. So I don't think it's a bad idea. And Sam was asking, we'll be going over the buy side elevator pitch for getting buyers the agreement signed, especially, Zillow Flex Lead, who you've never met, for instance. But I think that having things like this too in your toolbox to be able to pull on as you're going through it are certainly, certainly something. And honestly, so Zillow Flex is like a good example. And I think we will be kind of scripting and role playing a little bit, right, Omar, around a little later on. So I don't want to like kind of jump the gun on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the and we've purposely left a buffer of a good 30 minutes or 25 minutes at the end of this specifically for Q&A based on the Zooms that we've already been on, where again we don't have the answer for everything and things are constantly evolving, and every state and actually what here's is interesting, every MLS within the state is actually kind of taking different positions and stuff right now too, which makes it even more fun. So I will say from like a top down, like a national going down, what they're saying is make sure that you're doing things in the way that specific MLS that you're operating in wants to see things done, and reach out to whoever your state or local broker is to confirm that you're doing it in a compliant way that works well with that MLS. So you're covered and not liable, but you're also appeasing, whatever that MLS wants, because there are fines that we're hearing are going to be coming about here in New Jersey. I'm not in every state, but what I've heard is that the way that the DOJ then let the real estate commission know that then the commission wrote up certain contracts that then the MLSs hold them accountable, and they're the ones who fine the agents for not doing things. They're governing those contracts in different ways per MLS. So again, it's just, we want to make sure not to scare anybody, but again, to get back to like knowing your contracts, know your MLS, know what they want, talk to your broker, have these conversations. And when you operate in that way of being the consultant that actually did their homework, the consumer is going to feel that alone and understand that, okay, this person's actually a professional. I'm working with a doctor right now. I'm not working with somebody that just got the real estate license yesterday. And I'm going to feel a lot more confident about getting into that relationship with that person.
Great segue. And I think we'll segue into the next piece that we want to have as a plan here. But before we do, you mentioned the MLS is enforcing things. I'll just throw a little piece of comedy in there, which I think is kind of funny. There's a podcast I was listening to a few months ago where the MLS had their annual meeting, and all the heads of all the MLSs were in a room together, and the NAR representative came in and said, So how we're going to do this, guys, is you guys are going to be in charge of enforcing all these rules at a local level. And a legit laughter broke out in the room. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a little bit of a chaotic situation with how these things are going to be enforced, but we're not playing around because they're going to be enforced. It's going to be a crazy, funny way that they're going to try to manage this rollout, but we're here to do things the right way. So we covered, guys, we talked about being able to explain clearly what's going on and what the strategic advantages. We talked about knowing your forms inside and out. And the next thing you need to know, and I think a lot of us already know this, we're going to talk through some ideas that we're bringing to the table, and I think this would be a good place to mastermind a little bit. You got to know your value prop. You got to know it. You got to have it down. You got to be able to talk about it. You got to have it on documents. You got to be able to present on it. And there needs to be a robust amount of value we need to provide to clients right now in this environment, especially on the sell side. I think or buy side. I think we're very good at doing this on the sell side. We have listing presentations. We have our marketing presentations. We need to create and develop the buyer side of that. And everyone's going to be different. Every organization is going to be different. Every individual agent is going to be different. I think they need to include a few things, though. They need to include all the basics, obviously, right? You got to talk about your negotiations skills, your market knowledge, all the things you're going to do that everyone's going to do. And this is that when we're on a listing presentation, we talk about everyone's going to take professional photos and put it on the MLS and all those things. And obviously we are too, right? There's a kind of that basic, but you got to have it documented because you'll be so surprised how many sellers, at least in this case so far, won't even know that that's something that you're offering if you don't put it down there and at least provide the basics. Something else I think that's going to be incredibly valuable, and this is Andrew already touched on this, is I'm sorry, Kevin already touched on this. Sorry, I got the Cassie brothers flip-flop there. Off-market opportunities. You got to have a strong, either in your own back pocket or not pocket, but in your own mind, who these sellers are. You got to have in your organization, in your brokerage, and know relationships with people who are going to be able to give you running information on properties that are coming to the market soon. Is going to be valuable in competitive markets. And again, that goes down to it's going to change. In other markets, these value propositions are going to flip, right? But today, that's something that's valuable. We've heard people talk about, and we discussed bringing people on staff, right? Like there's people out there that are bringing inspectors on staff. Not saying we're doing this. I'm not saying you should do this, but it's a thing that we're going to see in the marketplace, bringing house cleaners on staff, bringing people on staff and offering it as part of a value proposition to the buyer. Something that I think we're going to see a lot of too is leverage. And we're going to talk about accessibility. We're going to talk about how the staff, both the transaction coordination staff and also like ISA departments, can get to work for buyers, vetting out properties, finding properties for them, and dedicating at certain levels of service a designated amount of calls on their behalf for the exact type of property they're looking for. There's a lot of people talking about post-closing services, having their homes cleaned, putting warranties on. And we're not talking about, commission structures that are static. We're talking about for extra levels, services levels, people are including different things in there. I think something you got to think about is the technology and the systems that you have right now in your business that is going to be an advantage and is going to help a buyer find the right home and get to the closing table smoothly. And we need to be, I think, really prepared to pivot these value propositions in changing markets. As markets flip and we go to a buyer's market or we go back to a seller's market or a neutral market, the value prop is going to change a little bit. Some of the basic stuff is going to stay, but we need to be able to see what is the need of the buyer in our market today. And what do we have that we can continue to add to our value prop, and how do we present that thing in a strong way? I think it's going to be different across the board. But those are the things.
Jeff, and I'll add to that too. I said this before and I'll say it again. It's the mindset around this is when you're going, this is obviously working with buyers. It's no different than working with sellers. If you're asking a seller for 2.5%, 3%, 4%, whatever the case may be that you're going for, and you're pitching that, why should you expect that from a buyer without pitching them on anything? So when you put a deck of the offerings of what you're offering to them, you want to have some sort of a resume, right? Of what your accomplishments are, who you are, what you can do for them, what you bring to the table, your contact information, all these things have to be there. And then you have to have a deck of different services that you're going to be able to provide that buyer with those services and why they should work with you, right? So this is what Jeff is talking about, is knowing your value prop, practice it, know how to pitch it. Just like Romeo did before, have a story that you're going to be able to tell And sometimes that story may not be yours. When I first started in this business, I don't know if Danny's on this call. He's one of them. Goldfarb is one of them. Brett is one of them. I used their stories and I told those kind of stories until I built my own. And then you have a story that you're going to be able to tell over and over again that's going to resonate with buyers and sellers until something changes. And those changes are going to continue to happen. You're going to have different stories to tell.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that we can like in these stories too is we told them on the seller side a lot. We've told them where we've had somebody who tried to sell their property, couldn't get it done, hired us. We helped them renovate some stuff. We helped them do some staging, and we netted them an extra $5,000 on top of all the money that they invested into the renovations, and they walked away in 30 days with an awesome closing, blah, 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 right? We have those stories that we've succeeded where others have failed, I think is the old cliche catchphrase, right? We need that on the buyer side. And the buyer side is going to be just different things, like helping people find off-market properties. Someone's been looking for 2 years and you help them find something off-market, helping them win a bidding war by getting more strategic about doing simple things. And I expect most of us already do this because we're on this call, but things like calling the listing agent and finding out, other than price, what's important to that seller, right? The terms, or they want to rent it back. Like, and again, you guys probably all do that because you are on this call on a Thursday afternoon, but does every one of your buyers know that you do that? And do they know it early enough in the process that they're going to make a decision to work with you because of something like that you do? I think we take a lot of these things for granted that we do, and we're no longer going to be able to. We have to communicate these things to the other side. The buy side stories too, like we have really good stories that we just got to crystallize, and specific ones where, like, I'll shout out my wife who's on the call. She had buyers that were scared to buy in this one part of town. They really wanted to stay in this other part of town. They felt like they needed space and they went there, and then they wanted to move back. And they were like, we hate this place. We want to move back. What do we do? We were able to turn that property around, help them do some light renovations, help them do some light staging, source an off-market property back in the market that they wanted to live, that was a little smaller, but the right community they wanted to be in. And we're able to help a buyer that was a little uncertain of what they wanted to do, still transact, made money, and was in the right community at the end. They were a renter before that, right? So like, that's a story that you can tell of how you were able to really hold someone's hand and guide them through the process rather than just opening doors and writing contracts for them, right? The consulting side, the value side. So we'll stop there for a second.
When you really, really care about your clients and you don't care about your commission check, you'll succeed.
There she is.
That's one of those cases where I was like, it's going to be a Christmas miracle, guys, but I'm going to do everything I can for you. Oh, and happy Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Absolutely.
If I could just add, to follow in that vein, I think if you don't already have some sort of a buyer presentation when you're meeting buyers and you're walking them through all those value things that you do, you certainly need one now more than ever. And, you know, that actually, for me, has been the best way to develop relationship, because I'm not just their agent, I'm their value resource throughout the process. So, I mean, I have people that still call me, hey, I'm doing the floors. I remember you said you had a guy, because I have a quote unquote, I got a guy list. And, you know, they're all vetted, and I flip houses and I tell them the whole story, right? Of like who I am and all these different things that I do and how that brings value to them. And how, like, hey, when I walk through a property with you, while I'm not a home inspector, but because I've done some of these properties, I can give you a pseudo home inspection through it. And like, let me also share with you, like, we're going to walk through some homes sometimes that will look beautiful to you, but because you're not a house flipper, you won't know. And I'm just going to simply tell you, you're not buying this house. And if I do that, just trust me, because it's a garbage house. Like, the flipper did a terrible job. And like, telling them up front that you're going to do those types of things sets you apart from somebody else who's, just like you said, going to be a door opener. You have to be their guide and their resource throughout the process. And if you do that, like, you will rarely have somebody that sold a house without you, even if you forgot to stay in touch with them for a year, like some of us do sometimes.
And I think a lot of this is just going to elevate the game overall, or elevate the industry. Jeff, you mentioned this before. Any listing agents on this call? Just raise your hand. How many times have you gotten in a multiple offer situation and you just get offers without even getting a single phone call to ask you what the seller is looking for? Pretty much every single time. I'd say if I had to guess a random number, it's probably 70% plus of the agents just throw an offer. It's like throwing shit at the wall and you hope it sticks, right? Now things are going to be different. You're going to have to be able to negotiate these terms, the price, what the buyers and sellers are looking to accomplish, and get to the meeting of the mind is what you're going to try to get to. So I think having that mindset that this is going to elevate everyone is going to change a lot of things for you in the way you look at this.
Yeah, I feel like too with that, like getting into what is it going to be? And I always ask, like, if a realtor, where are you playing at a level 10 right now? Or where do you rank yourself? And a lot of times, if you look at yourself on the buy side of things, where are you playing from a level 1 to 10? And to go back to like what Kevin was talking about, where having them signed into that contract actually makes them want to go to work. And Sam Haber, are you in a position to unmute right now by any chance? Because I know we'll get into the Zillow Flex aspect of the quick in the driveway thing, but I want to ask you about another thing.
Yes,
there
might
is
be a slight baby noise in the background, but yes.
No worries at all. So Sam, I know you recently had a closing where you had a set of buyers and you had kind of reached out to sellers in the area and you found something off market for them, right?
Yes.
So tell me like a little bit about what was like the buyer's profile, what was the history, what were they looking for on that side of things? Like quickly, but not, you don't have to go too into detail, but it was a family or something, right?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it was last April. I was looking with them aggressively for till the end of the year, say December, January. And we looked at 20 plus homes on the market, all sorts of things, and they just weren't finding what they liked, along with competition, on each property, say 10 plus offers on the nice one. So we kind of slowed down with the showings a little bit, say like January, right into February. I had a call with them, and she said they wanted this one specific neighborhood for the same elementary school, and we just weren't finding that. It was a very specific market. So I had a call with them. Long story short, she said, "Oh, maybe we need to consider other towns." And that would like a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, no, I cannot let this happen. Like, we were just looking at one elementary school, not even the whole town itself. And then she's saying, we're not finding it. Oh, maybe we need to like broaden our scope. And so that's when I just got a calling list, went to work, called some off-market properties, found one, and it was their dream home, and it worked. So I actually just had a Zillow Flex call come in, and they're like, we've been looking for a year, and we're just not finding it, and we stopped our search, and now we're back on it. And I'm gonna milk that story, all day. So I told them that story, and I'm like, I will find it for you because I just did it, a month ago, and it closed. So I'm gonna have that as like a main part of my value prop for sure. But yeah.
So again, we'll get further into that, but everybody in this call can use that story because David DeVoe has that exact same story. I have that exact same story. Omar's prospected and had that exact same story. Red has that story. Jeff has that story. That's the story.
Team has that story.
You can't beat that. That is actually solving a problem in the today market where a buyer was defeated and was actually going to take their kids out of that elementary school. And then Sam solved the problem. Sam, you didn't even make a ton of phone calls for that one either, right? How many people do you think you talked to?
Well, to be honest with you, the power of prayer. I prayed a scripture in the Bible. I made one phone call, and it was the first phone call that I made that was that property.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted
to manifesting. We call that manifesting here. We call that manifesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pray to somebody, whoever it may be, and manifest some wonderful things. But I wanted to bring that up because think about how many times you didn't pick up the phone once for that one buyer. And Sam, what was the price point on that transaction?
It closed at 1.19.
So it's not a bad phone call to make.
And I want to say something about that story. It's not like, hey, we prospect off market for you. Hey, we have a success story. It's, hey, this is how we operate. This is how I had a client who was about to leave their dream neighborhood, their dream elementary, and we were not letting it happen. Like our agents don't let, our organization, whatever your thing that you're presenting value around is, That's how we operate. And that's the story. That's the emotional level. People decide with their hearts and like justify with their brains or whatever that old saying is. That's, I think, the power of Sam's story is he was just like, no, we're not letting you pull your kid out of elementary school. We're getting this done for you. That's what people are going to be looking for in this new market. That type of consultant, that type of advocate, right? Not just somebody who's going to help with the transaction. So I think that's awesome, Sam.
Thanks.
All right. Do we move on from value prop? I think we're going to have to do this in 2 weeks again because we're not getting to everything we want to get to today.
There will be a 2.0. We can
Yes.
announce it at the end of the call, and
We
we
will-
can send people a sign-up link.
Yeah, even if we take the next 30 minutes, I don't think we're going to get through the stuff we want. So, Brett, Omar, did you guys want to get into some Zillow Flex stuff specifically? I know, Brett, you've been kind of teasing that, or we can go kind of down the list with some other stuff. It's up to you.
I think that I want to say, and I welcome everybody to chime in on this. I want to say the listing side of things feels fairly easy right now, not to get the listing, but to have these conversations with the sellers, because there's an opportunity for them to potentially pay less commission than what the norm is, unless you tell them the Chesapeake Bay bridge story, in which case they'll want to pay as much commission as possible. But I really feel like the question or the concern that comes up often is not necessarily even around Zillow Flex, but like Kevin mentioned, not that buyer that's coming to you as a referral, or that past client that wants to go back, or your sphere of influence, or your sister who's buying, whatever it may be, but really that like quick bottom of the funnel. I want to go see 123 Main Street this Saturday at noon, or a tenant that wants to go out and see a property right now. And having that touring, that driveway 1 day agreement or long form agreement signed, whatever it may be. What is the commission that you're putting into that? What's the process around that? How do you get them comfortable? What is the quick elevator pitch in regards to that? And I think that for us, the one thing that like Jeff and I are geeking out on is really identifying, who is the lead? What is the lead? You being a salesperson or a consultant at the end of the day, where can you push? Obviously we want to get in person. We want to have that conversation before we show them any properties. That's the goal. From there, maybe it's a Zoom if they don't want to do that. From there, maybe it's a phone call if they don't want to do that. In which case we're doing it in the driveway on the hood of the car, getting wedding signatures if that's where that process goes as well. But when we're coming into that, one of the things that I've identified, if I know I'm in a driveway signing scenarios, I'm definitely calling the listing agent and figuring out if there's comp, and if so, what is the comp available? If the listing agent says to me, seller's open to comp, make an offer, we'll figure out the net aspect of things. For me personally, I'd probably put 3% in that agreement. And I just have that driveway conversation where, we're working through it. And the seller is going to be paying comp based on the conversations that we had. And it all depends on the number and where you offer and whatnot. So this 3% isn't necessarily something you should need to worry about. But this is where, kind of talking through that, I would venture to say folks on this call have already had a driveway consultation based on that 1-pager or the 2-pager or the 5-pager. And I'd be curious to hear, how those are going. And I just think that's like the nitty gritty pitch where we need confidence, and it's more of the unknown today.
Brett, one thing I'll add before we open it up to everyone, I think it's super important to try to get that in-person signature. That's your easiest way to get the meeting. And then I'm going to say, hey, Brett, Starbucks is 10 minutes from here. I'd love to buy you coffee. Let's sit down for 15, 20 minutes and show you what I can do for you to find your home. There's your meeting. And then you pitch them on, the services that you bring to the table, get them into buyer broker agreement then and there. But I'd love, like Brett said, hear what you guys have been doing and what's been working, not working so far before these changes even took place.
So Romeo, I know that in Maryland, we have trained ourselves to make the process of the meeting and agency with a buyer something we've been doing for a very long time as much as possible. Could you share a little bit of just like standard business practice of really the mindset as an agent, and when we say yes and when we say no, and how that helps us by those meetings and relationships?
Yeah, for sure. My practice now is Omar, exactly what you said. Like I'll meet them at a coffee shop nearby. And so the kind of the spiel is, listen, super excited to meet with you. Would love to show you properties. I can show you properties as soon as today. With that said, it's really important that we meet for a couple reasons. And number one is because there's a legality reason to it. Like I technically can't go in and show you a property without having a signed agreement and not have the seller's interest at heart. I have to, I legally have to. So, you know, we have to meet so that I can tell you what it is that I'll do for you. And then also I will need you to sign an agreement. Now, granted, that agreement can be good for an hour. You can tear it up afterwards. That's fine, but we have to go through that process. Nobody's ever torn it up an hour words afterwards, of course, because, you know, you show your value in that meeting. But you just put the elephant in the room out there. Like, yes, you need to commit to meeting me. Yes, you will have to sign something with me. And yes, we will go look at a property today. However, all three of those things need to happen for us to be able to do that. And so it takes some of the control back, right? Because like if they're not willing to meet with you first and spend 20 minutes, then I'm not going to run out and just show you a property randomly. Like there's just no need to do that. And I apologize, this always comes across probably a little bit sexist, but as a man, I'm a little more risky with just meeting people out, but not all of us should even consider maybe meeting somebody out without having some sort of safety net in there as well. So I think it's really, really important that we do meet people somehow, some way in a public place, just to make sure. And if you have a gut vibe, I mean, I've been doing this since 2001, and I've always felt totally confident, except for one time, and my spidey senses were up, and I was like, okay, that guy might have killed me if I would have given him an opportunity. So like it can happen. There are weirdos out there. So that would be kind of that one little soapbox on that. But definitely you got to meet with them. You got to have a buyer presentation. And I take it, but I'm also like this. I've got this beautiful presentation and I'm going to leave it open because I know some people need their eyes to go to something, but I'm just going to talk to you about the whole thing because I do this all the time. Does that work for you? And then that way it's there. And then I also just say, and I'm going to email it to you. That way you have it. Right. But you're right. Like have them sign it in front of you. That way, like they understand what they're signing and explain that document to them and make sure that you know that document and what it says. And again, that value of what you're going to do for them. And in that 20 minutes, you can share a lot of value. It doesn't need to be the fluff. It needs to be, this is what I will do for you if after today we decide that we're going to work together permanently until you buy a house.
Here's the best part. If we decide, because you're interviewing them too,
Yes,
doesn't
100%.
necessarily mean it doesn't necessarily mean that you're automatically going to take them on. If you don't
100%.
vibe with them, if there's something that doesn't click, you're not taking them on as a client. So this is what Kevin and I were chatting about yesterday is too, when you know your value and you're pitching them on certain things, you're only taking on a certain amount of clients at the end of the day. If you got 50 leads in 1 week, you're not going to be able to take the 50 leads. So guess what? You're probably going to take the top 10 out of those. And that's an opportunity for you to vet what buyers you're looking to work with and what buyers you're not going to work with.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it as well. I mean, I take a small portion of Sean Kokoska's buyer presentation with me, and that's the A, B, and the C buyer, and like explaining what an A buyer is versus a B buyer and a C buyer, and help them to self-select. Like, I need to buy in 30 days, or I don't care if I buy, or if I never buy, I'll just keep renting. Well, if they tell me, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to buy, but if I never do, like, it's cool. Well, I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time on them. Now, I won't say that bluntly to them, but I already know, okay, I'm going to show them this one house and then we're going to exit politely. And I'll put them on a drip campaign for 10 years.
Love that.
I think one part of this, just so there's a lot of different pieces, yet at the end of the day, what each and every individual wants to pay attention to is you're now more than ever in an expectation management game. So the more you can run to the objection that may come by surprising people, like signing a document they were not expecting, the more you can prepare them by letting them know what's going to happen, kind of using a here's where we are and what's next mindset, will just one at a time help diffuse these types of situations that we're getting ourselves into because we're not preparing the other person to know what's going to happen. And my famous analogy that I use all the time is that when we're working on these like communication structures and attempting to get people to be in rapport with us, so we're working towards the same goal together, a lot of times what happens, and especially now, because when there's like uncertainty and fear, we start to word vomit. There's like this already always listening. We're not actually hearing what people are saying or hearing the question. We're just attempting to regurgitate a script or something that'll get us physically back to comfortable, because when we feel uncomfortable, there's actually a sensation red. We were talking about it yesterday in a call of what's happening from some of the seller stimulus and that we can't control in the moment. So like really understanding that you're going to kind of have that moment of uncomfortability, but then know how to talk in a way that you guys get to the same place. But we attempt to do it like too fast. So the analogy is that if you are watching, everyone's watching a different movie in their head. So if I'm watching Moana and you're watching Cinderella, and you know at the end of this, you're going to be the prince who's going to put the slipper on my foot, yet I'm telling you about seashells and you keep cutting me off every time I say seashells, and I keep telling you glass slipper, and you're like, take me on a boat, and I'm like, I want to take you on a pumpkin, and you're like, boat, pumpkin, boat, seashell, shoe, it doesn't work. Yet if you let me tell you the whole beautiful story of Moana, and at the end of the story of Moana, when I ask you questions along the way, so you explain the boat and you explain the island and what the seashell looks like, and I'm like, that is such a beautiful movie. Can I tell you a story about Cinderella and how I think she may be able to help us faster? And that glass slipper is a little bougier and worth more than the shell. And they're going to be like, oh, tell me about Cinderella. Yet every time you attempted to go into that resistance with them when they're in that initial communication, now more than ever, you have to let people play out their narrative and their movie before you can inject, if you're going to stay into rapport and get people where you want to go. So like use that analogy when you realize how fast you're going to switch someone's mindset or stop where they're thinking and get them somewhere else. And that's really what this is going to become more than anything, is understanding people's behavior and how to work through the conversations that way.
Beautiful. And I think what you're saying is exactly spot on. You got to meet people where they're at a lot of times too, right? Like depending on how Brett got us into this whole conversation was like, we're not talking about referrals or people that you know really well. We're talking about more bottom of funnel, like how we handling those, because like, these people are all at different parts of the process. And quite frankly, like your value to somebody who's 2 years out is different than your value to somebody who's 2 days out. And we need to recognize that and make business decisions of who we're going to work with and how we're going to work with them, based on our time, our energy, our value prop, our client load, and go from there. Like, I think I just keep thinking back to the sellers, right? Like, what do I do with the listing presentation? Because I'm going there without a guarantee of business either. And how do we get people warmed up to us? Well, we have a beautiful listing presentation, seller's guide, and sample paperwork that we send ahead. And we have an initial conversation, we qualify them, we set an appointment, then we have our admin team send ahead to really make us look like, a professional, solid organization. Hey, listing coordinator, can we please send this ahead? What's different about buyers here? Have a great conversation, tell them about the process, set an appointment, say there's some paperwork that we're going to have done before we go see the property, send a beautiful buyer presentation, a beautiful service value stack and service guide, and listing and sample listing paperwork. Set up another call later that day or next morning, whenever the appointment is, so you can have it and have that conversation. Now, some people are going to sign it and they're going to be like, let's go, let's rock and roll. And some people are going to go, are you out of your mind? I would never sign something before talking to my attorney and taking a month and a half of wasting your time back and forth. And you're going to get every response in between. And some you're going to be able to handle and explain through and ask questions and use your salesmanship, as Brett was saying, be the salesman that you are, saleswoman that you are. And sometimes you're just going to be like, this is not a reasonable, logical, rational person. I'm not going to work with them. And there's someone on this call I love dearly who knows exactly who I'm talking about. I'm going to get him to crack a smile. That's him. There he is, cracked a smile. Somebody you're just not going to work with, right? And I think you just have to make a business decision. Are you going to give that person a free showing on the first one? Are you going to sign a showing agreement at a very low concession because you want this buyer and you are really hustling and you're willing to risk that showing to then have a secondary meeting to sign them long term? Or are you not, right? Depending on the price point, depending on your workload, depending on your client load, depending on your spidey sense, Romeo, right? I love that. 100%. Sometimes you feel like, if I just meet this person and I take a risk of my time and do it under, a quick show property agreement, this is going to be a good client. Like, I can feel we're in rapport. It's worth it. And other times you're like, if they don't sign for a full boat, long-term commitment, I'm not wasting my time with this person before I get out there. So I think that's really, it's not a clean, simple, like push button here answer. And like, let the results come out the other side. But that's the mindset and the concept that we have to go into every conversation with a new buyer with, and kind of have a process that vets them out, have the right questions that we ask them to vet them out, have the right paperwork we send and information we send that vets people out, who's willing to play that game with us, and who's just trying to get us to open a door, and there's no reason to pursue anything further. So kick it back to whoever wants to dovetail from there.
Danny, go ahead.
So polite raising your hand. You're only to raise your hand on the whole.
I'm usually jumping in and bothering people. No, I mean, the way I look at this on the buyer side is you're going to gain so much more time back. The days of you running around just chasing and chasing and chasing, for the good and the bad, it might be a little sting at the start. Once you dial this in, you're going to operate so much better, so much faster, and be able to make more, as long as you have that value and as long as you go into it confident. You know, it's no different than going to get a listing. Now you just got to go lock and load on the buy side. I think it's going to be a net benefit for people.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's going to be a net benefit for people that are here, again, on a Thursday afternoon, taking over an hour and a half to talk about this, because the people that are not here have no chance in landing clients with that type of need for value propositions and commitments from the clients to see the value, recognize it, and compensate for it. Like, it's going to be, I think Dan hit it perfectly. It's going to be a little sloppy, a little messy in the beginning. There's going to be a little bit of resistance. There's going to be a little bit of turmoil trying to figure out exactly how we fall into this new flow. But on the other side, you're going to have someone like Danny who can carry 10, 15, 20 listings at a time sometimes, and doing it because he gets the commitments, because he shows the value, because he's able to work a long-term business model. And that's what's going to be possible now on the buyer side for really the first time in our markets, at least, because our markets never operated like this, unless yours always had buyer's agency agreements.
Yeah, I mean, your point there is right on the money. It's like, how many times have you been working with a buyer for 6 to 8 months, and then they go to an open house and boom, they go buy with the listing agent? Those days are done.
Yep.
It's huge.
Awesome.
We have a question. How can you build up the confidence to absolutely know that you are on the positive side of the positive buyer value? Jonathan, can you unmute? What do you mean by the positive buyer value?
I guess good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be on the call. Very thankful to be able to sit in and learn from you guys. I guess like when you're an agent trying to build up, I guess, the confidence in yourself and in the confidence in the deal that you're bringing, to let it know that it's actually going to be a positive. Like, there is value there that you're bringing beyond, you know, just the initial value.
Yeah. So Jonathan, I'm understanding it properly. You're a newer agent, kind of looking, maybe need some more stuff to lean into. Is that kind of what you're feeling?
Well, I'm not. I might even be too early to call myself an agent because I don't have my license in place yet. But just building confidence in the space is, I think, key, because you want to be able. Because the more you believe in your own product and the properties that you're selling, your buyers are going to pick up on. They're going to know that they're going to pick up the energy.
Yeah, I love that question, and I think I could talk about this for an hour. First of all, here's the first thing. Like, you're going to have some people that pick up on that. Accept it. It's fine. You're going to be new in the beginning, and you're going to get better from there, right? Like, don't be scared of that situation. Second is, you need to find the organization, the partner, the team, the brokerage, the mentor that you can lean into their stories and their experience, just like we were talking about earlier. And you can own that. You can own, yeah, man, I'm new, I'm young. I'm young into the business, and I'm ready to hustle. And here's what I have behind me, experience-wise, value-wise, systems-wise, like long-term mentorship-wise, right? And guess what? Those people, a lot of them aren't going to be willing to get out and hustle as hard as I'm going to be willing to hustle, but I have their knowledge and their experience behind me. So you have the best of both worlds, having a young in the business, hungry agent ready to go with all the resources and training and support behind me that I have. You just have to refine that mindset and that elevator pitch for yourself. Right? From there, like, you just have to be willing to know that, like, you're going to feel that way for a little while, and then you're going to evolve from there. And you're going to do some work that's going to feel funky and clunky. And before you know it, you're going to be owning that and working on the next thing that's going to feel there. The other thing, and Omar's been saying this for a few weeks now, man, this is the perfect time for you. the playing field just got leveled. Everybody has to deal with new processes, new conversations, new paperwork, new objections, new unknowns, new changes that are going to still come, and adapt from here. And the playing field's never been more level for how to actually engage in today's market. Now, as long as you can go back and borrow somebody else's background and their history and their kind of like support behind you, and you can really tell that story properly, I think you're better off today in this industry than probably any time over the last 10 years, where somebody else was the incumbent and had all the things figured out.
Yeah, I think you have a huge advantage coming in right now, and just getting licensed. And I will say, like, the consumer loves hard work and they love communication. And the version of myself 18 years ago when I got into this business was a lot grittier and had a lot more free time on my hands to really service the crap out of any buyer that came through my world. And that's the advantage that you have right now, where they could sign into another agreement with another person. They can tell you no, they can, whatever it may be. And if you say, listen, I totally appreciate that. The agreement that you signed with the other person, are they only showing you properties that are on the market, or are they showing you off market properties as well? Are they hunting into like specific neighborhoods that, you know, you're looking for? Because if you want, you can see everything on the market with them and deal with the bidding wars and everything like that. And while they're doing that for you, let me know what specific neighborhood you want to go into. I'll go onto the MLS and pull the last 5 years sold in the neighborhood that you want. So you can go through photos and actually pick out properties that you think would work well for you and your family. And then I'll go knock on their doors and find out if they have any interest in selling. And then I'll come back to you with that information. And if it makes sense for you to go and tour one of the properties that they want to see, then great, we'll do that. And if not, that's totally fine. But my job, John, and this is what I would say, and I've always said this from back in the beginning, this is not a sprint. This is totally a marathon in the world of this business. There's so many people that I lost a sale on in the beginning that I got the sale on down the road, my sister included. I didn't sell her a home 20 minutes away from where I operated because she didn't think I was good enough to operate in that market. And then I sold her home 5 years later because I got better. I leveled up, and then I sold her another home in that same market too. So just keep that in mind, where it's like, listen, I'm here to give you value. I'm here to play all out. I know I'm new, like, lean into it, but I'm going to be so good that you can't ignore me. And if it doesn't work on this time, we're going to stay in touch. And you know, when it comes time to sell that home, I want to be the guy you call.
And if I can add one thing to that, to iterate on that, because when I was new in the business, I worked 7 days a week, 10 hours a day for like 3 years. I didn't go to family barbecues. We didn't do those. So we hustled our butts. I answered texts and calls from clients 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night if they came in. I was up early doing them. I was up late doing them. And I started hearing more experienced agents going, you need to own your time. You need to make your clients respect your limits, and you need to like have off time. And I'm like, do I need to? And then it flipped. I was like, well, they have a book of business that they've spent 10 years hustling to build. Now they're giving me this advice. Maybe it's not relevant to me yet. Maybe I need to, like, I don't answer calls and texts at 11 o'clock now. I take a lot of time off now. I have a different business now. I put in some work that has established that to now be able to give that same advice to maybe other people at that same place. But my advice to younger people is, dude, answer the phone at 11 o'clock if you have to. Hustle. Build that book. Build that base so that for the rest of your career, you can continue, you can change and have a different mindset, a different business style, a different lifestyle around it, right? So don't just watch out for that trap as younger, newer agents. And even like, hey, I'm putting my boots back on. Like, we're getting to work. I'm gonna work a lot more the next 6 months than I did the last 6 months as these things change. And it's just, that's part of the business, right? You need to cycle through, you need to meet the business where it's at, seasonality, market changes, and don't be afraid of it. And anyone who says, you know, I own my time, I don't do this for my clients or that for my clients, that's your business decision. My business decision is operating this way, and I think it's going to give me a competitive advantage. And when I no longer need to operate that way, I'll pivot that. So just watch out for that one thing as these changes come and as newer agents are getting into the market.
Another thing that I'll add on too is pick a partner, pick an experienced agent that you're going to be able to shadow and mirror that business. I said at the beginning of this call, when I entered this business, I wasn't in the real estate world. I was in sales. It was similar, but very different. Danny, how many times did I shadow you on a Zoom during COVID? We're like literally on Zoom hours at a time. He's doing his thing, and I'm just literally sitting there listening to it. So I'm telling you, if you ask a person to do that, the answer 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times, is going to be yes. So just take bits and pieces from whatever you can learn. And just as much as you guys are learning from this call, we're learning the same from you guys, because everyone brings different ideas and different perspectives into every single call that you're on. So Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just still trying to wrap my mind around the when you haven't met the buyer. So the Zillow Flex thing. Like, so for example, I had a Zillow Flex a couple hours ago. I'm gonna call them back. I was waiting until this call. You know, they want to see a property on Saturday. So I'm just trying to get the best process for having them have a signed buyer agreement before I show them the house. So some of what I heard was like, Jeff, what you said, like, you know, send the buyer presentation, send, you know, a copy of the agreement, kind of a thing. I just really want to make sure that they're comfortable with the process so that I still, you know, I still do the showing, get the in-person meeting. So is it like send it to them ahead of time and then schedule the coffee shop thing like a little before the showing? I'm just trying to really warm them up to here's what's going to happen and how it's going to happen, and you know, to obviously get that in-person meetings still, if that makes sense.
So great question, Jen. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in Maryland, where this has been like common practice for a long time for us, the best case scenario is usually they will two-step the process when they can. And we attempt to get as many buyers into the office as humanly possible. And if they won't come into the office, then we start the next step and try to get them to meet us somewhere else, sometimes closer to them. If they won't do that, we ask them to Zoom, same thing like we talked about before. Yet a lot of times it's usually like going through this buyer consultation, it's asking them the series of questions, it's getting them to their must-haves, it's really questioning so you have like the full picture of what it is they actually want to see. A lot of times it's starting to just do a quick, you know, pull up on the MLS and say, okay, well, based on what we just talked about, this is a little of what's going on. Let's get our next 1 or 2 blocks of showings on the calendar. This is how I want you to favorite things. This is the way the website's going to go. It's like an expectations meeting. It really is a gift, right? And now at the end of the day is really the buyers aren't going to get in the house if they're not going to sign something. So while we are concerned with the whole idea of how are we going to get buyers to sign something to see a house, well, if they want to see the house, there's literally no agent and no compensation who's going to hold a real estate license that's going to let them in the house without the signed agreement. So that's the easy part. Now it's just a matter of how we're going to create the experience for them so they can get used to it, make it simple for them, and enjoy the process so they actually get that next level. We will do more sessions on this. We can do a whole sessions in itself around this buyer experience from like start to finish. We've gotten really gritty with that, and signs when you come into the office and giving them mugs, and you can do everything under the rainbow. You can get as crazy as you want, just as we would get on the other sides of business before. But at the end of the day, it's helping them understand that by them spending this time with you, it's not about whether they're going to sign an agreement or not. It's the mindset that this little bit of time that they're going to spend with you is going to ensure that you have the knowledge of what they need and the market to be able to move as fast as possible to get them in the least amount of homes that nail their must-haves and put them under contract to whatever goal they may have in whatever time frame as fast as possible. So you continue to say that this meeting, when you will leave it, you will have these tools, you will have resources, you will have complete clarity on what it is, what you need, and what's possible. You will be connected to the resources you need. You will have a lending resources. Like everything happens. So it's like, I want that. I don't want to go in a house and see a house because I'm in a hurry. The person who really wants that probably isn't the buyer in most cases. Obviously a little different with some of the Zillow stuff, but in most cases, the customer likes service, and that's service. And so just think about like you going to a wealth advisor, you're going to want to have a meeting and understand what's happening before you're going to drop them your funds. So again, it's a little bit of that mindset and that experience, but that really helps the buyer want that time versus us being concerned of getting them to sign something before they can see the house. It's a whole different process and mindset around it.
And Sam, you're going to likely get them to sign the single property agreement. So my first step would be is to call the listing agent and see what they're offering or not offering. Right? So that's going to ease up the conversation on you for the first time. Show them that first home or 2 homes or 3 homes or however many homes that you're showing them. Just like Jen said, we all have to get this agreement signed. This is only for this property. And then from there, you can invite them to a coffee shop. You can invite them to the office. You can invite them to Zoom, whatever that is easiest for you and them, and do a full buyer presentation then.
Yeah, and I think like this is going to depend on two things as well, how you want to handle this. I think there's going to be some guidelines and organizations and, you know, brokers and how the best practices here, but it's really going to depend on two things. One is your comfort level and your aggressiveness of sales. And two, where's that client at right now? Like, is it a brand new lead that's like trying to rush you off the phone to get to the showing? And if it's me, what I'm doing in your situation, Sam, is I'm going to call it, I'm going to do what Omar just said. I'm going to get the information from the listing agent, get confirmed. I'm going to call him back and say, hey, we're confirmed. What we're doing starting today is, you know, new policy in the state of New Jersey. We have to get paperwork signed with anybody before we can show them a property. So what I'd love to do is meet you 20 minutes before at my office, at the coffee shop, whatever it is, and walk through how I work with my clients, get that paperwork signed, we can go see the property. You're probably going to get no 80 or 90% of the times from a Zillow Flex lead, I would guess. I hope to be proven wrong, but that's my assumption. At that point, say, all right, no worries. I still want to meet you and show you the property. Let me send you our buyer guide and the paperwork we need signed. Send what you want to send as far as single property or an agreement with full commission or whatever commission you want, and an extent, depending on how aggressive you want to be or not. This is just what I'm saying. I'm not telling everyone they have to do it this way. So I'm going to kind of level it down, and I'm going to try there. Then they're going to push back. I can't sign something like that. What do we got? I want to see this property. No problem. I really would like to meet you as well. There's a single property agreement with whatever commission that you want to try to put on that. I can't be locked into that for this property. I'm not sure if I have that money. No problem. You could reduce it if you want, right? And continue to work it down the funnel, depending on how comfortable you are being aggressive like that and how much you think the other side is receptive to that type of communication. And that's where it becomes a business decision and a salesmanship decision on how you want to kind of work down that process. Does that make sense? How I kind of broke that out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's very, very helpful all around. And what I'm understanding from that is like, yeah, you're just working it down, basically. Yeah, just downgrading it.
And if it's a referral from a past client, you might get 98% yes, let's have that meeting, right? So different leads are going to be different. You're never going to have to work it down the funnel because they're going to give you that meeting because it's a referral or a past client or, you know, somebody who comes from your niche marketing that they see the value in working with you as well. It's going to depend on that.
Got it.
And Sam, I wanted to tell you that Tom Toole had a really great script that I just saw him do about starting off with explaining, has anyone met with you yet or talked to you about this? And then kind of backing it back down to where you can do a test drive and calling it a test drive. Let's do this single property as a test drive or a 30-day agreement. And I found that was a really useful script. So he's on Instagram. You can find him.
Okay. Okay, and just a clarification as a follow-up, right? So single property for this property, but we discussed like on this appointment seeing a few other properties. So that wouldn't be multiple single properties. That would just be the general one for even if it's like a week at the minimum, right?
Yeah, you should go like if there's not resistance and you can get to the rapport and you have that relationship, getting the actual agency signed is the goal. If there's resistance and they are refusing, and they're especially in the Zillow realm, because it's different than the rest of how most of this conversion is going to happen, then you can get them to sign the single property, which means they're seeing one property. If they don't like that property and they're like, well, here's the 6 I wanted to see, we're like, okay, well, that's amazing. And here's now the process in order for you to be able to see them. The good news is that nobody can do it any differently legally. So it's not like they can be like, oh, well, you are going to make me sign this. I'm going to go where it can't be signed. It can't happen. So it's really just learning how to bring it into the conversation and understanding, again, like we were talking about, meet them where they are and then go for which is appropriate in that moment. And then you can continue to convert them down the funnel if they will only sign the single property at first.
That's right.
Sorry, Jeff. I was going to say, I want to be conscious of everybody's time too. We have a hard stop at 1:30. Jeff, do you have anything, Omar, anything to close out with?
Yeah, I mean, I have 2-3 more segments that I wanted to go through that I think can provide a lot of value to the room. We're going to do them internally over the next few weeks for sure. But I think we come back in 2 weeks, guys, and we continue to do these. There'll be new rules that change. There'll be new policies that kind of come into play. We can hit some more of these more evergreen strategic topics that we wanted to plan for today. I'm happy we didn't get to it. It means there was a lot of good conversation and a lot of good collaboration. So that's exactly the goal here. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who came. Thank you for everybody who helped put this on. And Brett and Omar wrap us up. Jen, take us home.
Yeah, I would just say, be on the lookout for more to come in the next 2 weeks. This is open to any agent from any brokerage, your friends, family, people thinking about getting real estate licenses, whatever it may be. Let's blow up version 2 of this. And I think we went over 80 today, but would love to see, let's get up over 250 or so. So really appreciate it. Omar, any finishing thoughts before we get off?
No, I would say, guys, come back next time with any questions or any concerns or anything that you're seeing that's working and not working, because this is, like we said from the get, is a collaborative effort. So anything that you can share with us, anything that we can share with you, we're only going to help elevate each other.
Awesome.
But thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
We will
Have a
send
good
out the replay to everybody, and you can go back on workshop.alignteam.com if you want to register now for the next session. And we will also send out the link and email so you can register there or send it to anyone else you think this would be helpful for. Thank you to each and every one of you. If you were here as a guest, if you could just drop your email in the comments so we can make sure we get everything to you. And we look forward to continuing to collaborate on this. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.